In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 149 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is motivation. Our quote of the day comes to us from Benjamin Franklin. Motivation is when your dreams put on work clothes. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I'm really excited to bring you this episode, as I've been a fan of our guest today for many years. As someone that enjoys working out and personally challenging myself in the gym, it is quite an honor to welcome a former CrossFit Games champion. In addition to battling some of the world's fittest individuals, Jason Khalipa has also dealt with his fair share of personal challenges. As a father, husband, author, athlete, and entrepreneur, Jason doesn't hold back. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Jason, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody, and I know the answer already, is are you ready to bring it today?
Of course. I'm ready to. Yeah, that's not even a question. We got to do it.
Awesome. So as I spoke about before we went live, is the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a no-quit story of your own or perhaps a really challenging time in your life that tested you, but you kept on going and you didn't quit.
It's interesting. You know, the never ever give up, the no quit attitude, that's an interesting analogy for our life. So, I mean, absolutely I have an example of that. I mean, I have a number of them. You know, so I've competed at the CrossFit Games for a long time, been through some very challenging situations there. But it's funny because you bring up the, never give up type mentality. And there's a charity that my wife and I are extremely passionate about called NIGU, which is the Never Ever Give Up organization. And we got networked with them when our daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. And so from that perspective, I'd say, for kids fighting cancer and for our daughter, that was a good testament to the never give up. So that's the way I'd answer that question.
No, I think you definitely have had your challenges, and I wanted to ask you, during those tough times with your daughter, how is it that you and your wife were able to just keep going? Was it the fact that you guys had each other? Was it other people in your corner, books you were reading, things you were listening to? What kept you going day in and day out?
I mean, I think it's all of that, right? It's the network, it's the family, it's our relationship, and it's just having a lot of adult conversations. And I think that's just what needs to happen. It's good communication. I think most issues in life can be solved with just better communication, right? Just talking to the other person about how are you feeling, what are you thinking, before it starts to develop into something bigger.
Now, I think that's great advice that unfortunately most of us probably know in the back of our mind, but when it comes down to it, I don't think we do it enough. But the reality is it doesn't cost anything to be a good communicator. It doesn't cost anything to listen, just putting your ego to the side probably.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, 100%.
So I wanted to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, Jason, just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are today and what exactly you're doing.
So right now, I'm the CEO and founder of a company called NCFIT that we founded in 2008. Just hit our 10-year anniversary, which is cool. We have a little over 20 locations globally. We specialize in group style training. We do CrossFit, we do corporate wellness, and we also have a digital arm of the business for gym owners to utilize our programs. Also, obviously, I married my high school sweetheart. We have 2 children. One of them was sick, but is recovering from leukemia, which is awesome. And then I competed at the CrossFit Games for 8 years, 7 times as an individual, 1 time on a team. I won the CrossFit Games, and I was also on the podium a number of times. So it's kind of a diverse background of a lot of competing in the business side. Obviously, grew a business, and then trying to balance everything is really what I'm all about.
It's awesome, and I appreciate you sharing that backstory with us, and I appreciate your candor with your personal stuff. And I wanted to ask you in regards to the CrossFit Games and such a physically demanding sport. I wanted to ask you, for our listeners, is how do you keep going when your body physically wants to give up, especially during the actual games? What is it that keeps you going as opposed to giving up during those incredibly tough times?
Well, I mean, I think that all comes down to, why you're doing it in the first place. I think whether it's business, family, competing, whatever, if you don't really know why you're doing it in the first place, then you're probably going to fail. And I think at the CrossFit Games, if you're doing it for money or fame or whatever, it's only going to take you so far. I think you need to have a deeper reason of why you're doing it. And, for me, it was kind of, I fell in love with training. I fell in love with competing with my buddies in the gym. And an expression of that was getting out there and testing myself against the best in the world and seeing what I was capable of. But once I made the commitment each year to do it, then I was going to follow through with that commitment regardless. And so I've been in some very challenging spots, and I just told myself, like, hey, look, I made a commitment to myself, my family, to get through this, and I'm going to get through it. Win, lose, or whatever, I'm going to finish.
No, that's awesome. And I think it reminds me of a conversation I had a few months back with one of our guest, and he talked about something that was kind of interesting. He said so many people like to start things, but they don't like to finish things. And I think it comes down to the real commitment you make, not only to yourself, but to others as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that commitment goes across everything, right? Commitment, it's just contagious in the sense that, like, when you are committed to something, whether it be training for the CrossFit Games or your business, and you can carry that over in your relationships with your children, that's always a good thing.
No, I couldn't agree more, and I love going into those type of questions. So I wanted to ask you, Jason, how do you define success, or what does true success mean to you?
I mean, it used to probably mean something different, but now what it means is, obviously you want to be happy, you want to be healthy, but you want to be in a position where financially you're in a position where if anything happened to you, you're in a position where you can handle it. And I think that's what success comes down to for me financially, is being in a position where I'm financially secure enough that if I did need to stop working and take care of my child again who got sick, I would be able to do that. And obviously being happy and content and finding fulfillment in the work I'm doing, those are absolutes, of course. But if you're talking about purely a financial success rate, it's not so much the watches, the cars, all that stuff. That comes and goes. But it's the fact that you could build up a hedge so much so that if something happens in your life, you're able to, kind of put other things aside and focus on one thing and one thing only. And I think that's financial success. That's what it is for me. When my daughter got sick, I had incorporated the AMRAP mentality, or worked hard for a long time to put myself in a position where that night I was just able to send an email off and tell everybody that this is my focus for a month, 6 months, who knows. And I think that to me is one layer of financial success, to put yourself in a position where if something did happen, you'd be able to overcome it.
No, and I think that's a great definition, and I like how you talked about the personal side, but also the financial side. And I think being able to tell your clients and potential clients that you're taking time out to do this, I think is awesome, because having that financial stability gives you opportunities and gives you chances. And I think for me, I love that question because so many people answer it different ways, and there is no right or wrong answer at all.
No, and I've met a lot of people who are really rich who are unhappy. And so, money is not the goal. Money just allows you to create opportunities to do things. And I think you then use that money to go, for example, spend time with your family, create deeper relationships. You use it as a way to relieve any stress from financial tension on your family, right? It's just a tool, but it's not the end all. And, because everything else really needs to be built up to truly feel success, right? Where you truly feel enjoyment and you're loving life. I think money is a piece of that, but a lot of it comes with, the relationships you have in your life and the fulfillment you're getting out of the work you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm glad you touched on that because, like you said, watch and cars and houses, money comes and goes, but your health, your happiness, your family, your friends, those things unfortunately don't come and go in some ways.
No, and when things really get tough, those are the people you have to count on. And I've been there, right? And all the money in the world can't buy you, can't buy you people who are there by your side day in and day out, supporting you along your journey. That it just doesn't work that way.
No, I could not agree more. So I wanted to ask you, if you had to define yourself and you could only use one word, what would that word be?
Motivated. I'd say motivated.
That's a great word. One of the things we try to do is add value to our listeners on each episode, and one of the things we focus on is either the morning or the daily ritual. So I was curious if you have either a morning or a daily ritual that you personally swear by.
Well, I mean, obviously exercise, right? I think if you're not exercising throughout the duration of the day, you're missing out on something that's gonna create a powerhouse for you. I think if you're not, whether you get up early or you stay up late or whatever you do, but you got to get into the gym. You got to utilize that as a stress reliever, as a motivator. Because if you get into the gym and you bust your butt, the chances are you're going to bust your butt in a bunch of other things throughout the duration of the day. I find it highly unlikely that you're going to go in and push yourself and then be lazy at work.
No, I think it's so important that you mentioned that, because I couldn't agree more. As I think if you're going to get in, and me personally, I'm a crazy early morning guy in my gym. It just allows me to put myself in that mindset, and it's almost in the sense too, whereas you attack that workout and you get that in essence out of the way, and now you're ready to take on the rest of the day.
Yeah, so I definitely think that. And if you're not ready to make the jump to exercising regularly, that's fine. You can start off with just a 10-minute walk is a great goal, and then from there you can start progressing.
No, I liked how you said that too, is you start somewhere and build. And I think a lot of people look at working out or something else and it's almost too big, too daunting, and the paralysis by analysis. But I think, like you said, if you're not able to get to the gym for half an hour or an hour every day, just start with a 10 or 15-minute walk, a couple days a week, and build from there.
Yeah, that's it. That something's better than nothing. And I think, people always ask me, like, what's perfect? It's like, dude, better is better, right? Like, if you're doing better today than you were before, great. Like, you're winning. That's huge.
No, that's so important, and it's kind of like what some of the things that John Wooden said is, you always want to be a better version of yourself. So I love that better is better.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question for you. If you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, now assuming the 20-year-old version would have listened, what would that advice have been?
I would say, and I actually said this to someone the other day, I said, if I can go back in time and talk to myself when I graduated from college, right, I would have said to myself, identify something you're passionate about that you're good at, right? Find something, whatever that may be, and then become just the expert at it and stay consistent, right? Don't wander off in different directions. Identify something that you are, that you like, and learn everything possible, because then eventually over time you'll become so good at something that people will be willing to pay you for that forever. I mean, take for example the best barista in the world will always have a job. The best bartender in the world will always have a job. The best hairstylist in the world will always have a job. And that same thing applies to a salesman, right? When he gets into a category, he understands it and he learns these skills. Same thing applies for us. Right? If you become the best coach in the world, if you start to develop these skills in business, whatever it is, you'll always be able to kind of hang your hat on that, and forever people will pay you to learn from you, or they'll pay you for your service.
No, that's great advice, and I think it's always interesting as you get older in life when you go back and look at the advice you would have given yourself, or in some ways wish you had received. But I think you touch on something that was really important, is that you become the best version of whatever it is that you're interested in, and if you are the best or one of the best, you're always going to have a job in some way.
Yeah, I couldn't feel more deeply about that today, right? And for me, I think I did that without even realizing it, and that's what's kind of cool. I had one job, one girlfriend, stayed consistent, stayed focused, tried to learn everything I can, and still learning today. But I didn't waffle around from one career to another career. I didn't go off for 2 years and go do something, and I just kind of stayed consistent. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're 10 years down the line in one career path, continuously growing in one vertical, and you build something kind of big.
I think the word you touched on, and you said it a couple of times within that definition is consistent, and staying consistent and consistency. And I think in today's day and age, a lot of people want to be successful in some field or some vertical, and they almost look at it as overnight success, and I love people that talk about their overnight success, and they say, yeah, I was definitely an overnight success. It was 10 years overnight.
Yeah. I mean, you know the way it goes, right? And you know, it's an interesting analogy also that I like to think about. One of my business mentors has told me this, that, you know, anytime that you go out there and you try and like hack your way to success, it always will come with some type of, anytime you try and take a shortcut to anything, eventually it catches up with you. And what I mean by that is, like, let's just say you found a shortcut to become the CEO of some major company. Eventually, if you haven't developed the skills to get there, people will recognize and you will no longer be in that position. But then the problem is you've developed a lifestyle that's consistent with this CEO lifestyle. Maybe you're getting paid a wage, it's whatever. So now that's a problem. That's an issue because you've been placed in this position somehow, right? You've hacked your way there somewhere where you didn't develop these ground rules and skills. Then all of a sudden you're making $500,000 a year. You're developing a lifestyle that's accompanied that. But then if you don't actually have the skills, now they're going to remove you from that position, and it's going to be hard to find it elsewhere because you found a way to hack yourself to that position. So I think for me, it's staying consistent and earning whatever we're getting so that if something did happen, we know we could earn it back again.
No, I couldn't agree more. Is you know, if and when you do fall off that horse, you have the skills and you have all the requirements, so you just get back up and you keep going.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question for you. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I mean, I don't know. I'd like to have dinner with The Rock. I think he'd be fun. I mean, eventually I hope to meet him pretty soon, but I think he'd be an interesting person to talk to about just life in general and his perspective and, you know, how he's been able to, you know, be a father and grow a business. And yeah, I think I'd have a fun conversation with him.
Well, please let me know when you do have dinner with him, because he's one of the dream guests we want on our show.
Yeah, he would be good.
So you talked about some exciting news. You have a book coming out. I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the AMRAP Mentality is a book that we have coming out. It's been 3 years in the making. I started it before my daughter got sick. I wanted to kind of demystify some of what I would read in the bookstores. You know, I travel a lot, and I'd read these books, and it was like, you know, work less, get paid more, and it just didn't really work out for me. I didn't quite understand it. And so I wanted to write something that just kind of like shared my perspective about hard work, dedication, staying consistent, you know, whatever happened to that, right? And then my daughter got sick and took a couple of years to kind of reframe my mindset of what I wanted to write about. And now it's basically a book about incorporating this idea of AMRAP mentality. And what an AMRAP is, as many reps as possible. It comes from more of like a fitness side of the house, obviously. But the idea is, like, if I ask you to do as many reps as possible in 1 minute of push-ups, that's all you would be doing. You wouldn't be thinking about anything else. You just be present and focused on those push-ups. Just like I'm on the phone with you right now, just being present with you. And so the theory is, if we could take that presence that we get in fitness and incorporate it in other areas of our life, I think you'll get a lot more work done in less time. So when you're at work, be at work. When you're at home, be at home. And you're basically being present and focused and not getting distracted. So the book is about building a hedge, just so we go and exercise to kind of build this hedge against, you know, obesity, etc. We can go out there and go work our butt off and incorporate the AMRAP mentality so we can build a hedge so that if anything ever happened in our life, we'd be as well prepared for it as possible. So theory is, you work hard, you identify what you want to focus on at that moment, let's just say an hour, 2 hours, etc., and then you switch gears to something else, and you AMRAP this throughout the duration of your day.
I think that's a fascinating concept, and you touched on, you know, being present on the phone call right as we're on, and I think so many people in today's day and age with technology is you get that shiny object syndrome where all of a sudden something beeps or vibrates or shines a light, and all of a sudden you flip lanes or switch your concentration, and I think it's really neat. And when exactly does that book come out?
So we're launching it originally for pre-sale to Granite Games, which are coming up in like early September, and then actually releases what'll be, you know, shipped to people in early January. And all pre-sales go to NIGU, the organization I spoke about earlier, which is, you know, all proceeds from pre-sales go to basically kids fighting cancer. And so I'm really excited about the book. I hope to sell as many as humanly possible and put a bunch of smile on kids' faces and get the word out to work hard.
That's awesome. Now, the kids charity, is there a website for that charity?
Yeah, it's nigu.org. And, I'm not a founder of it. I'm not related to it. It's just an organization I support because I like them a lot. And so we have a fund within them that we could help manage to support families. But it's nice because it's a third party. And we just, send the money their way.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's so important in today's day and age, just because a lot of charities and things are things that people create for themselves or their organization, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the fact that you give back in this regard and the way you do, I think that says a lot about not only who you are, but the type of impact you're trying to have on others.
Yeah, I mean, especially, with what we've gone through in the last couple of years, I mean, it's like it's a lifelong commitment and it'll never change. And I think when people read the book, when people hear the mission, it's easy for them to wrap their head around, like, okay, this guy, I can see why he's doing this, and it's not for any alternative motive, right? It's like this dude's really motivated to go out there and impact some kids' lives and their families.
Well, the book sounds incredible, and I'm a big book guy myself, so I will definitely take a look when it comes out. And wanted to ask you, speaking of books, is there anything recently that you've read or something that you are reading that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
I honestly, I've been reading the MRAP Mentality a lot, right? I've been rereading, just making sure it's going to hit the notes I'm looking for. The Daily Stoic is something I've been looking at lately, where it's just a daily kind of piece from like these old school Stoics. But yeah, for the most part, there's, I like Mark Cuban's Sport of Business, but I've just been reading my book a lot.
No, you got to be focused on it. And Mark's book it's a great business book, but I also thought his book too touched on a lot of things, some basics for life in general.
Oh yeah, super simple read. It was great.
So one of the words we often talk about, not only on our podcast but from stage, is the word accountability. And I was curious what accountability means to you.
I mean, I think it's you establish goals, you create what's important to you, and you hold yourself to a standard to get it done. I mean, that's, as far as I'm concerned, like, you're accountable to your children to give them a life that's, good. You're accountable to your employees to provide and create trajectory for them. And you're accountable to your wife to stay committed. And these are just facts. And you need to hold yourself to these standards, I guess, is accountability. I guess that's a good way of putting it, establishing a standard for yourself and then actually going out there and holding yourself to it is accountability.
Yeah, I like it. And it's a similar question in regards to the success question, because there is no right answer. It's actually a personal question. So I wanted to ask you, Jason, before we let you go, if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
I mean, whenever I get asked this question, I always think about it in different ways. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is that for anybody listening, whether it's, whoever that person is, I really believe that life's going to throw you a bunch of curveballs, and it will continue to, for me and for everybody else. And I think you only really have one option, and that's to kind of hit it with a positive outlook. And I think I think every day you get a choice. You either look at the world in a negative or a positive light. And so I choose to kind of find the positive in different situations. So regardless of what people are going through right now, I think they really dig deep, they'll find something positive that they could find out of each situation. So that's what I would share with them.
No, I think that's great advice, and it sounds simple, but I think it's something that we all need to do. And I think it reminds me of things that I've gone through in my life. And I think every single day, probably numerous times, you can always look at something with a positive approach or a negative approach. And it doesn't mean that everything goes from terrible to amazing, but I believe that if you approach any obstacle in life with a positive mindset, you're going to have a better chance as opposed to a negative mindset.
Yeah, it's surely not going to hurt.
So last question, I promise it's the easiest one. What's the best way for our listeners to connect, follow you, or find out more about not only your book, but also anything else exciting going on?
I mean, Instagram is going to be the best place. JasonKhalipa.com will be revamped today. But, I think Instagram is probably the best place. Jason Khalipa, JasonKhalipa is probably the best place. That's where I'm most active. But obviously I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, but I'm rarely as engaged on those. So Instagram would be the best.
Well, listen, I truly, truly appreciate your time. I look forward to not only reading your book, but following all the amazing things that you continue to do with your career.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time today.
Thank you for listening to episode number 149. Jason and his wife were dealt with an unbelievable challenge with a sick daughter, but they remained hopeful, positive, and they didn't give up. Jason and his wife have also put their money where their mouth is, and they are involved with paying it forward, through their charitable endeavors. I love Jason's definition of success. He described it as being both happy and healthy, with fulfillment in the work that you are doing. Jason said one thing that really stuck with me. He said that anytime you try to hack a shortcut to anything, eventually it always catches up to you. Jason spoke about how in life you can always look at things either as a positive or a negative, but you always have the choice to try and make a positive out of it. Jason shared how in his life and his very successful professional career, he has met a lot of people that are rich and have a lot of money, but they are not happy. Jason and I spoke about the fact that money does give you options, but it doesn't necessarily make you happy. So where do you stand with your definition of success? And what makes you happy? Is it your family, your future, your career, perhaps money in the bank, or possibly driving that fancy car? There's nothing wrong with working hard and wanting certain things in life. Wanting to have a nice car and a nice house doesn't make you a bad person. However, on the flip side, having a really nice car and a nice house also doesn't guarantee success. I challenge each and every one of you to look at both your definition of success as well as your definition of happiness. Be clear with your definitions, decide what you want, and go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.